Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops in Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And guys, before we even get going, want to apologize for last week. We ended up taking kind of an accidental break. We didn't mean to. It's really on both Blake and I because we got to later in the week and we both actually had conflicts over the weekend where we couldn't record. So we both just assumed that we'd be able to record on either Thursday or Friday. And by the time either of us thought we ought to reach out and confirm that, it was already Wednesday night. And we each had alternatively a conflict on the other night that the other was free. Anyway, this is all scheduling crap. You guys don't care. I just wanted to express that we didn't mean to take a break, and we are sorry that we did. It just, you know what? It's August. It kind of happens, and we figured it wasn't the end of the world for you guys. But we're back now. We're ready to talk some Pistons hoops, and there's, kind of like half news. So, you could kind of feel the momentum, right? We're getting out of August. They're coming up on September. Labor Day is just this weekend, and, NBA basketball's around the corner finally, right? So we apologize, and we're excited to go.
Hey, it's August, and our schedules didn't jive, but I think it was for a good reason. Like, Wes, you got to pat yourself on the back. You ran a triathlon, so
I did.
Well, I guess I'm making you. So congratulations.
You are, yeah. It's all good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I did the Chicago Triathlon on Sunday. It was a really good time. I had a lot of fun, so I'm hoping to do many more, God willing. Hopefully I don't get hurt or anything like that, but it was a great first experience into it. I had been swimming for a while, and then now I'm, doing the biking and the running too. So it was a good time, fun environment. And man, you cannot beat the scenery when you're out on that course, man. Like, you're doing an open water swim right in Lake Michigan. So you're swimming, it's sunrise, and you're looking at the skyline as you're going by. Right, you're going up Lakeshore Drive for the bike, and then you're running down by the museum campus, the Shed Aquarium, the Lakeshore Path. Like, it's incredible. So I discovered why it's actually the largest triathlon in the U.S. every year. So you can't beat it. It was a great time.
That sounds amazing, and more power to you, because I don't see any triathlons in my future. But
fair enough.
It seems like you powered through it, and it's only up from here. So congratulations.
A little over 3 hours for anybody
I
curious
could not
about
tell
it.
you if that's good or bad or whatever.
Good job. It's good for a first time. It's good I was above average in terms of all finishers. I placed above average, which is, I think, pretty good for having never done any of these before and having no clue what the heck I was doing as you're going through it, So not bad. I'll take it.
That sounds pretty good to me, and I guess now you have a time to go ahead and beat. So that's a fun feat to work toward.
Yeah, exactly. And Blake, I think we'll get you out on the triathlon stuff.
Oh boy,
we'll start you on the short distance ones. We'll build you up, and then you'll be out there with me. You'll see it's not actually bad. It's not too hard.
I don't know about that. Never say never, I guess, but I can cheer you on with a sign on the sideline.
I did see. Okay, so we're totally off topic, but there were some really funny signs. I think the best one that I saw was along the running path, and it was just two columns. One said me, the other said you. And so under the me column was like donut, coffee, beautiful view. And then on the you column was swim, bike, run. Like, good luck, guys. I thought that was pretty great.
That's great. Hopefully you had like a nice meal or beverage after that, because I know that's what I would need.
Actually, I just hopped on and did the background for the Pistons Pulse, and we had a great episode on Sunday. So if you guys did not tune into that, you should. We had the Slam and Jam crew over. We previewed the Western Conference, and as a little Pistons nugget, right, we had where the Pistons would slide in if they were in the Western Conference, which was kind of fun. I thought that was a unique spin, so that we would get to talk about general basketball instead of forcing Pistons conversation too much.
Yeah, that is fun. Yeah, definitely, to any of our listeners, listen to the Pistons Pulse if you're not already, which I'm sure you are, because it's a must if you're a Pistons fan.
Yeah, I mean, you're here, so you got to be listening to Pistons Pulse. And in that vein, I did just get done mowing the lawn, so I'm doing my Pistons Pulse duties.
Yeah.
Making those hosts proud over there. Well, specifically Bryce. But all right, that's enough. That's enough of the other stuff. Let's talk about Malik Beasley. All right, so there was news, and for our listeners, there was news and there was follow-up news. Okay, so it's kind of a convoluted web at this point. Difficult to understand exactly where things stand. But initially, we got a report from Shams that Malik Beasley, per his agent, is no longer the target of the federal gambling investigation being run by the DOJ right now. And so that's wonderful news. You think that's fantastic. Pistons reportedly were keeping in contact with Malik Beasley. There were a couple of other teams that were rumored to be interested as well. So that's where things kind of stood. They stayed that way for, I think it was about 2 days, right? 1 or 2 days before we got a follow-up report. Do you remember who sourced that one? I know it wasn't Shams, obviously, but do you recall who we got credit for this?
I did see that Awful Announcing posted an article like about the reporting around it, and that Malik Beasley, although Shams's reporting was correct, he's no longer a target. That doesn't mean he's not involved in the investigation in somewhat. So, I mean, it seems like a word choice, like a semantics thing, like we were talking about off air. So yeah, it's correct that he's not a target, but that doesn't mean he's fully out of the air, I guess.
Yeah, and of course the DOJ is no comment, as you would expect them to be under an active investigation. Of course, they did initially leak the whole thing in the first place. So, there's a lot of moving parts, lots going on. It seems like there's, kind of a lot of legalese, legal speak, media speak, right? You got the agent speak going on. So everyone's kind of taking their own ankle on this. But from what it at least seems like, what we all can tell based on all of this reporting is, at a minimum, the DOJ is not specifically investigating Malik Beasley. That's at least better than what we had before, right? So there's now some talk of whether or not this is going to allow Detroit in particular to bring Malik Beasley back. And it's probably, it's not the place of this podcast really to talk about the legal side of it, right? What's actually going on behind the scenes there. It's probably not our place either to speculate, right, on whether or not the agent's right or the secondary reporting's right or whatever is going on here. So I guess let's just kind of take everything at their word for now and assume that Malik Beasley's kind of back on the market. What would that mean for Detroit, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it means that door is not shut that we might have thought it was before. I think the door is more closed than it was since we got this news, because obviously the news breaks, the Pistons totally change their offseason plans. They go ahead and sign and trade for Duncan Robinson. They sign Karis LeVert. There's still an open roster spot. Malik Beasley probably isn't in line for the deal he was getting before. The Pistons have his early bird rights, and so they can sign him for, I believe, just above $7 million. And some other teams like the Nets have cap space. Some other teams have their MLEs and non-tax MLEs and things like that. So there are teams who can offer Malik Beasley more than the Pistons can. There's also other teams who can offer him a minimum and potentially a different role. So I think just like what it means for the Pistons and Malik Beasley, and as well as just like the market in general, I think there still is going to be a little bit of weariness because of the situation. Like, we obviously haven't seen him sign to a team yet. But it seems like he's pretty much a free agent right now. I think he'll be playing out if he gets signed somewhere while this goes on in the background, similar to what we saw with Terry Rozier with the Miami Heat. And I believe it is the same investigation that they're a part of. So in general for the Pistons, I think it just means like that Beasley window isn't totally closed, But I think it's a lot trickier after you made these moves where all plotting out what this rotation is going to look like. And obviously, if you bring Malik Beasley back, like he's going to play. You're going to find a way for him to play. He had the second most 3-pointers in the NBA last year, but it does just get a little bit trickier. So I'll be interested to see if he does end up back with the Pistons or he goes elsewhere, just like what the future holds in general.
So I think there are a couple directions we can go with this one. Let's let's start just on the Malik Beasley side of this first, right? So if the window's open, right, he's got a few routes, a few avenues he could take. You're right. He could come back to Detroit. I believe the Pistons can offer him a little over $7 million in salary right now. So that's pretty good, right? That's more than the minimum. There are plenty of teams that could offer him a veteran's minimum contract. There are a few teams, I think it's 3 or 4, that are capable of, as you mentioned, offering that mid-level exception. And then, of course, you've got the Brooklyn Nets with kind of all the cap space in the world right now. They could give him a 1-year deal up to, I think, around $15 million. So if you're Malik Beasley, what's kind of the best option here? I mean, you're approaching your 30s. So on one hand, it kind of makes sense to cash in, but he's also bounced around a lot. He's been on quite a few teams here just over the past 4 years. I think it's 5 teams in 4 years at this point because of a couple of trades. So on the other hand, maybe stability is important. And I guess it does come down to just what Malik wants. But if you're Malik Beasley, where are you looking right now? What would be kind of your path?
Honestly, I think it's role focused. If I was Malik Beasley, I would go to the team that has the most clear role. Like he was a super valuable player for any team in the NBA. And if the Pistons season broke differently last year, he's definitely one of, if not the hottest candidates on the trade market. And I think we're seeing QT in the chat mention there's not a big role for him here anymore, unfortunately. I agree with that. I mean, I think if Malik does end up back in Detroit, there will be some sort of role carved out for him. He makes an impact for any team that he lands on, no matter what their shooting is. Like you can always use a Malik Beasley, but it's just trickier here. And also for him individually, like I don't know, and I don't want to speculate, but maybe there is a situation where he is put in a position where he has to take the highest offer that's on the table with the financial troubles and everything that have been reported. Again, I don't want to go too much into that, but maybe it is. But in general, like all that stuff aside, I'm seeing this upcoming year for Malik Beasley as a 1-year prove it deal, whether it's a minimum or something more. And then maybe next off season, pending how this investigation goes, if he gets cleared, everything like that, then maybe you're in for that longer term deal at a bigger amount like he thought he was going to get this year before everything hit the fan.
Yeah. And I do wonder how, for a guy that's bounced around like that, how valuable would a multi-year deal be, right? Like maybe you're not able to get up to, $14 or $15 million in salary anymore, but if you could get, say, the Pistons 7 over the course of 2 seasons, guaranteed both years, you don't have to do the whole free agency song and dance again, right? Next season. I wonder how valuable that would be. We do know that Malik has put down some roots in Detroit, so maybe that's enticing. I'm not sure. I'm with you. Like, it seems like there's kind of a role issue in Detroit, and then there's also the money thing. He could go and get more elsewhere. But let's address that role thing right here. So this is MimC313. Says, does Malik Beasley to the Pistons even make sense with the roster as it is constructed? He says Robinson is the shooter, LeVert and Jaden Ivey are secondary ball handlers, and Ron Holland has a developing jump shot. He wants him, but I don't know, right? So what do you think? Is there I guess kind of a conflict here with the role, and then specifically, what is it?
I think this is what I'm struggling with too, honestly. Like all the extracurriculars outside, I would love Malik Beasley back on this team. after everything he brought last season, not even just on the court, how great he seemed as a presence in the locker room and everything, for the vibes and all that stuff you can't quantify and everything like that. I think even though the role isn't clear right now, like if you sign Malik Beasley, we have to break it down and see where he fits in. Or my opinion is, if he's brought back, he'll fit in somewhere. But who is that at the expense of? Is it at the expense of Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson? I think it would be a lot of trial and error, trying different lineups, seeing what works. Maybe someone's going through a down period that takes away from their minutes, but Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson came here over the offseason expecting to be a big part of this team. And does that change with Malik Beasley in the equation? I think it does, and kind of muddies the waters a little bit. So I think that's a very sticky situation that Trajan Langdon has to deal with and figure out. All of the moves he's made, he seems very calculated. And so I think it'll be something that is thought through. It's not just let's bring Malik Beasley back and figure it all out later. But it's just not clear anymore with how the Pistons offseason landed, and they did what they had to do with the names that they lost. However, it's just now with things changing, it makes it trickier to see a path for Malik Beasley landing back here. And if he does, how that makes sense with this team in general.
Yeah, I think this one's really tough, honestly, because there are a lot of, you'd say, conflicting truths here with this situation when we're looking at the role. Because, I'm with you. On the one hand, right, you look at this and you say, more shooters, more elite shooters, right? That's never a bad thing. So you want Malik Beasley for that reason. And I'm with you. I would want him on that roster for that reason as well. And I think you could look at the guys that the Pistons added, and you could compare Malik Beasley to Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson. And if you wanted to take the stand that Malik Beasley is the best individual player of those three guys, I wouldn't argue with you too hard. Right. I could see it. I could see alternatives, but I could see it that way as well. So like, if you're saying, okay, look, like, Duncan Robinson definitely is playing over Malik Beasley if you bring Malik Beasley back, I don't think that's necessarily true. It's totally possible that Duncan Robinson could be the guy taking the back seat, or Karis LeVert could be the guy taking the back seat, right? All of that, either of those could happen to make room for a player like Malik Beasley. And then I think you've got the coach element here, which is that, Bickerstaff hasn't really wanted to go to a 10-man rotation in the past, regardless of where he has been. He didn't play a 10-man rotation last year for the most part when you have games that didn't have foul outs or injury issues or foul trouble in general. He was playing primarily a 9-man rotation. Don't see a reason that would necessarily change here, which means adding Malik Beasley is going to take minutes from someone else. And then, as you were saying, right, you brought in these guys, LeVert and Robinson, to play a role. You got to ask yourself, if you were their agents, would you have signed a contract in Detroit if you didn't think they were going to get minutes? The answer is probably no, right? You probably would have been looking elsewhere. So it's almost an implicit condition of the contract that they signed, was that they were going to play minutes. And now if you don't give them that, how does that look from the agent perspective, right? How does that look for the perspective of other players that are thinking about playing in Detroit, or maybe they're getting traded to Detroit and the feeling that they have about that move, right? So like, this is really layered in a way that makes it uncomfortable to make a guess, at least for me, as to what's going to happen. Because again, Malik Beasley at $7 million for a year or two, on paper, sign me up. That's great. I think the off-court stuff was awesome for him last year. He was a leader for these young guys. He, the vibes king, however you want to put it, right? His shooting was incredible. And if you could have a rotation that has both him and Duncan Robinson, I love that spacing. I think that's incredible. But then now what's happening with LeVert, I definitely don't want to take minutes away from Ron Holland. I would be worried about the kind of back end business side of this. How would that look if you kind of implicitly promised a guy some minutes and then before they even did anything, right? Before training camp even hits, before they could prove they're worthy or not of those minutes, it goes away. Like that looks really bad. This one's really tough. I think however it shakes out, I guess you just have to trust Trajan Langdon because I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, and I think in this context, Duncan Robinson is an extremely interesting scenario because he gave the Pistons a break sort of with the deal that he signed. It's a very team friendly deal. Maybe it seems like a lot on the front end, but partially guaranteed in year 2, non-guaranteed in year 3. What happens if he just overperforms and outplays what he's worth? Like the Pistons can pick up his option and everything, but just in general, I think of a player who has only been on one team his entire career, makes this leap to Detroit, and honestly cuts them a little bit of a break to do that. And I think a lot of that goes into, we're at the point of Cade Cunningham's career where players want to play with them. Like Malik Beasley had a career year shooting the ball when he played next to Cade Cunningham. Why can't a player like Duncan Robinson do that? And if he's not going to be playing next to Cade Cunningham as much, I think that might ruffle a bit of feather. Like, not saying Duncan Robinson won't accept whatever role, but it just makes the whole front office and deals that were made before, it changes the game a little bit, which I honestly don't know if the front office is really up for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point with Duncan Robinson kind of cutting the Pistons a break on that deal. I hadn't even thought of that, right? I mean, he certainly doesn't do that if he's not expecting to get some clock, right? To actually get some play. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, honestly, I think the odds are still against Malik Beasley coming back to Detroit at this point. There's still so much up in the air, right, with the investigation, whether he's a target of it or not. There's still so many other routes. Like if the role really is a sticking point, he could go to a couple of contenders that could offer him a 1-year minimum deal. If he just wants to go get some stats, right, put up some big numbers. I mean, the Nets have nobody that know how to put the ball in the basket. And they got a bunch of young guys. Bryce brought this up on the Pistons Pulse just the other week, that they've got all these young guards that they want to develop out there in Brooklyn. What do you need to do that? We saw it, spacing, right? You need spacing. Well, you can't get much better than Malik Beasley. And I'm still a firm believer that there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. So if the Nets sign Malik Beasley for that $15 million mark, 1-year deal, doesn't work out, you just wipe your hands clean of it and move on next year. That's no big deal. So I'd like to see him come back. Yeah, I'm with William here. I would also like to see Malik Beasley back in Detroit, but it kind of feels to me like maybe the cards are stacked a bit against it. And as much as I would root for it and as happy as I would be if it did happen, there's just so much unknown at this point. It seems like the smart odds are a no, regardless of what I think I would want to do.
I agree with that too, and now that we're both saying that when we jump back on
right.
next week, Malik Beasley signs with the Pistons for a 1-year minimum deal or something like that.
No, watch it. He'll totally prove us. It'll be a 2-year vet minimum deal because he really wanted the security to stay in Detroit. And we were wrong twice. Yeah, that definitely could happen. All right, we got a fun question here. This is from my guy, Caleb Lanou. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. This is actually one of my students. So he said he'd pop in. He found out I had a podcast. So shout out to Caleb. But he says, as a Nuggets fan, how do y'all see the Pistons lining up against the Nuggets when they play each other this year? So another one of those great questions. We actually had this when we had Anthony from Pistons Talk on just a couple of weeks ago now. We did the Rockets. We did the Magic. And who was the third team? Do you remember?
Oh man, I just remember those two.
It might have just been those two. Maybe I might be misremembering. It was probably just those two.
You
regardless, if you
talked
guys
about the
haven't,
West on the Pistons poll, so yeah.
yeah, exactly. There's been a lot of Western Conference stuff on my mind recently, and you know what, guys, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check it out because it's evergreen. It's August. Nothing's changing. But let's do what we did then. Okay, try to keep it to the starting lineup. So just 5-on-5. We're not figuring we're gonna sub in Isaiah Stewart for Jalen Duren because we want a better Jokic matchup here. Let's just straight starters against starters. How would you match up the Pistons starters against the Nuggets starters? Who are who Christian Braun or Brown or Bruce Brown?
I'd
Who's
go with
starting there, do you think?
I I'd go with Christian,
That's what I
honestly.
was thinking too. Okay, so you're figuring it's Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, Nikola Jokic. Those are those starters. How are you matching up?
I think it's a hard matchup no matter what way you break it, mainly just because there aren't many teams in the league who are guarding Nikola Jokic. We've seen in the past all the problems that the Pistons have had with bigs who can step out and shoot. And I mean, Jokic isn't the best 3-point shooting big there is, but everything else he can do that creates even more problems for the Pistons as well. And I really like the Cam Johnson trade for them. I mean, honestly, I didn't hate it for the Nets either because, yeah, you take on Michael Porter's money, but you get some draft picks and they don't have a franchise player. So just stock up as much as you can. The Michael Porter deal definitely hinders that a bit, but overall, I think it is a team that the Pistons would have problems with. Like, I'm wondering right now who would you put on Jokic? Like, do you have to put Jalen Duren on him by default, or would you potentially like throw an off-speed pitch with Asar Thompson on him a little bit?
This is one of those situations where I think you kind of throw the Jason Kidd strategy against him, and Nikola Jokic, go ahead and kill us, and no one else is going to score. We're going to focus on everyone else. I think that would kind of be my strategy. So, tentatively, I would want to have Duren on Jokic. Tell Duren to just be as physical as you possibly can. Jokic is going to tear up the Pistons on that one-on-one matchup, but don't send too much help. Try to limit the assists. Try to limit the overall impact. And if he scores 40 on you, but only 5 assists and 10 rebounds, I think that's honestly kind of a win here. So, like, if it's me, I'm putting Asar on Murray. I would be putting Ivey on Brown, Cade on Cam Johnson, and Harris on Aaron Gordon. And I'm actually pretty okay with those ones. Like those 4, I feel all right about the matchup for each of these. I think Cade is the right type of bigger guard that could actually have an impact on a guy like Cam Johnson. I think Tobias Harris knows how to guard Aaron Gordon. They overlapped there for a little bit in Orlando, and I don't recall in the past Harris just getting torched by Gordon, so I feel pretty much all right on that. And then Ivey on Brown, that's fine. I think Jaden can do okay. The one I'd be interested to hear whether you'd rather have Jaden Ivey on Jamal Murray or Asar Thompson on Jamal Murray. That's
So
what I'd be interested in.
if you had Ivy on Murray, would you have Asar take Aaron Gordon?
Probably.
Okay. Because I was gonna say if you have Asar on Jokic, for example, I'd be worried about Aaron Gordon cutting all over the place and getting easy looks at the hoop. But if you put I honestly don't hate Tobias on Aaron Gordon either. But if you have Asar on Aaron Gordon, I think that takes that away. But then you worry about Cam Johnson. Like you said, I think Cade can do an okay job on him. And that just leaves letting Jamal Murray beat you, honestly, which I don't know. I think that might be how I go about it. Like just put Ivy on Murray and see what I mean. It could go poorly pretty quick, but if that is the case, then maybe you switch it up there, and maybe the answer is keep Tobias on Gordon and put Asar on Murray. So in general, I just think it's a team that brings tough matchups no matter who they're playing, that the Pistons are going to have to figure out how to deal with. And honestly, I think they only got better over the offseason with the Cam Johnson acquisition specifically. And Christian Braun's probably getting better too. Like he's no slouch or anything that's just going to hide.
Yeah. This one's actually really fun, to be quite honest with you, because neither of those guards do a ton of off the dribble stuff. Murray does more of it, but like Christian in particular is very much an off-ball guard. And obviously a lot of that has to do with Nikola Jokic, right? A lot of that offense runs through Jokic, as it should. But Jaden Ivey, we know he struggles off ball. But if you could get him on ball more, you're going to have a little bit more success with him as a defender. So I think I'm with you. Like the moment that I said I'd put Ivey on Brown, I regretted it. I actually don't think that that's a great matchup for him at all. I think you'd maybe even rather, if you could, like if you're going to stick Ivey on Jamal Murray, maybe you put Cade on Christian Braun and you ask Harris to guard Cam Johnson, right? And then you're still sticking Asar Thompson on Aaron Gordon. Like I think that I'm actually thinking that's where I'd be leaning right now. Final thoughts, final word.
Yeah. That just, I think both those ways sort of leave as Jamal Murray as the guy who can exploit this offense. And I think Nikola Jokic is going to do it no matter who is guarding him. So it's just a matter of minimizing that and maybe throwing different looks at them to see what works overall. But yeah, the Nuggets got better. They're going to be a tough team to guard, and luckily the Pistons only have to play them twice a year.
Right. Okay. Let's get on to another one here. We got a fun question, I thought, from our guy QT. Says he could save it for later, but you know what? No, QT, we got you. We're doing it now. What do you think of the Pistons' draw in the NBA Cup? So the Pistons are in the B group for the East. They have the Magic, the 76ers, the Nets, and the Celtics in that group along with them.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I'm trying to look at the other groups to see if there's one that I would rather be in. I think the only one you could
see.
Yeah, make an argument for is C, which has the Bucks, the Knicks, the Heat, the Bulls, the Hornets. Let's say you trade the Pistons for one of the better teams. So let's just say the Bucks, for example. Still, I mean, yeah, I think that would be a little bit of an easier draw for them. You'd still have to go up against the Knicks. The Heat aren't that game could go either way, and then you have the Bulls and the Hornets. So, but where the Pistons fell, I do like their chances. Obviously, the matchup with Orlando is the one to look at with how they got better this season, and then you have Boston and Philly. Who knows what those teams are going to look like? I think the Pistons are clearly better than both those teams, but it's just a one group game that you have against them and you have to do pretty well to get through. We saw what the Pistons went through last year. But overall, I think it's about as good as it could have been drawn out for the Pistons, because you're not going to see the Pistons with 4 bottom 5 teams in the East. Like the league isn't going to draw up those matchups. So overall, I think it works out as good as possible as it does for Detroit.
The one thing I keep thinking as I'm looking at these groups, right, in the Eastern Conference is just this is a good time to be a basketball fan. You can make an argument that a lot of these teams are going to be maybe even exceeding the expectations that are set out for them. Like if you look at that A group, right, the headliners there are obviously the Cavs and the Hawks, and I love the Hawks roster, man. I think they're going to be really good. But the Raptors, they've got a shot if a couple of things fall their way. They have a lot of talent on that roster. They could be a fun team to watch. I think the Pacers might surprise some people too. They're in that Group A, and I know Halliburton's out for the year, but that's still a good roster. They lost Turner. I get it, right? You're not expecting a ton from them, but that was a tight knit group. I think they could kind of rally together and exceed some expectations. And the Wizards, it's just a question of how long they keep playing the vets to me. When do they blow it up? Because they do have some talented veterans on that roster, and I kind of like the way that the pieces fit together a little bit, but I don't think the Wizards want me to like the way that the pieces fit together. I think the Wizards want to be bad. So, that's just not going to go well. But, that's my point, right? Like, you're looking at all these groups, and all the groups have 5 teams, and you're thinking, yeah, like these could be 5 pretty solid teams when it's all said and done. For the Pistons group in particular, yeah, the Nets don't scare me, and the Nets aren't going to be very good. But we've had this conversation with Boston before. I get it. They hemorrhaged a lot of their championship winning roster, but they still got Jalen Brown. They still got Derek White last I checked. Like, that's a talented team. There are a lot of good players out there in Boston. The Sixers are seeming to be healthy, right? It seems as though they'll be healthy. That's always up in the air, but as long as they are, they're going to be a tough out. And we've talked about how good the Magic are and how difficult they are a matchup for the Pistons. And, you just keep going through these lists, and there's a lot of really talented teams. I know it's not popular to say I love the NBA Cup. I think it's a lot of fun. I get that it doesn't matter. I get that, the Lakers throwing up the banner for the NBA Cup that one year was maybe a little overboard, but it's fun. You add some more tournament style basketball to it. We get an extra game. Like, what are we complaining about? This is going to be a good time. I think the Pistons are in a good group. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun series.
Yeah, I'm a fan too. It brings something a little bit extra to follow when the season's starting out, football is still going on, and it's just something to play for. Like, and I love the whole point differential thing when you see blowouts, and we saw the Pistons do it, try to increase.
And they keep running it up. It's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
Point differential, and that gives you competitive games, competitive defense, like pretty much throughout the rest of it. And then, it happens, and then we'll all forget about it by the time the playoffs come around and be like, who won that again? But I think especially for younger teams or teams who are trying to take a step, it provides a scenario for more. Every game is competitive, but just more stakes, I guess, earlier in the season.
Yeah. And, honestly, I don't know for sure if we've mentioned this on the podcast before or not, but like the conversation with the NBA Cup, the conversation with the play-in tournament, to me, like, those are the two things I love the most that the NBA has changed over the past few years. Cause I think the NBA they have this tendency of, when there is some adversity, when you have fans talking about, the sport's not as good as it once was, or these injuries are a problem, we need to be solved. Whatever the problem is, whatever people are complaining about on ESPN, the NBA has tended recently to respond by giving us less basketball. And I love basketball, so that kind of pisses me off. But what they did here with the NBA Cup is they gave us an extra game, right? We got a new tournament, and then at the end of it, we get an extra game, and I think that's awesome. The NBA play-in tournament, that's 3 extra games for each conference. Like, yes, please, when in doubt, provide me more basketball to watch. And I love that they've done that. So please, Adam Silver, don't ever take those 2 things away from me. Just keep adding on, right? That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I think he's always, in the league as a whole, is always open to trying new things. And I think this, as well as the play-in tournament, have both been successes. The All-Star game format, not so much. And
that's because it's less basketball, dang it.
I am not too worried about that, because we will see that change as well. So that's just one of the small things I appreciate about the league. Their willingness to be open and make some change.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's just a double-edged sword. Like, don't change it by taking things away. Just add to it. Be additive. Don't take things away. I like more basketball, not less, right? All right. This was a fun one here. This is from Pistons fan. It says, what do you think is the best offensive system to maximize the Pistons players' potential, with Cade as a superstar and several non-shooters like Duren and Asar and potentially Ivey returning, and then now Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson. So to be clear, we're not listing Duren and Ausar and Ivey as non-shooters. There's a comma there. I just read that off really poorly. So we can try again. Several non-shooters like Duren and Ausar, comma, Ivey returning, comma, and now LeVert and Robinson too. So what sort of offensive system do you think would maximize this roster? And we don't need to name it. You don't need to be Phil Jackson here and say you want to see a triangle offense or anything like that. But like, how do you see JB massaging all of this to fit together offensively?
I mean, I think a bit of what we saw last year makes the most sense. I think this team has a clear makeup, and I think even seasons before when Trajan wasn't here, we had different head coaches and everything, saw what you don't want to do. And the answer to fix it was to surround Cade Cunningham with more shooters, more outlets for him to operate the offense, because what we've seen is you can really trust him to make the right play, whether it's for himself or one of his teammates. So yes, do some of the offensive players come at the expense of defense, and could there be some better defensive lineups? Yes, but overall, I think where this team and where I guess the league is going in general is scoring points, finding ways to do that, don't have holes on offense like we saw this team have for so many years. So, I mean, that's not really an X's and O's answer, I guess, on the offensive system specifically. But Wes, I'm really interested in your answer, because you have the more basketball playing experience than I do and are more the X's and O's guy.
Don't give me too much credit, Blake, but I appreciate it. Look, I think I'm with you. You would want to take a lot of, you're going to expect anyway, to take a lot of what they did last year and bring it to this year. The one thing I'm really interested to see is, we got our guy Camille. It's a Pistons Turkey. Hi,
What's
guys.
up?
Long time no see. Welcome back, my friend. So, look, I'm really curious to see how much of that playoff offense kind of translates now to the regular season for the Pistons. So what we started to see them do, and this was partially because the Knicks forced their hand, but the Knicks really were taking away the perimeter, and they were almost begging Detroit with the way they set up their defense to have Jalen, Duren, and Ausar Thompson beat them. They did twice, essentially, right? So because the Pistons did get 2 wins in that series, which is great. But ultimately, it was rather successful for New York. What the Pistons started to do to try and counter this was quite a few slips on ball screens with Cade, right? When they'd blitz the screen, they'd slip the screener. They started to use Ausar Thompson a little bit more as a screener himself. And then they played Duren in the middle of the key a lot more than they ever did in the regular season, which in that setup allowed Ausar Thompson to kind of be a baseline cutter. And we saw that work quite a few times, right? Duren got quite a few assists in that series based off of that action. So I'm curious to see if they're able to do that again now with Jaden Ivey instead of Tim Hardaway Jr. Because what Tim Hardaway Jr. did was provide a ton of movement spacing, right? He wouldn't just sit in a corner or sit out on the wing. Whenever they were doing that kind of high-low action there, or at least most times when they were doing that high-low action with Duren and Ausar, they were doing some sort of action on the weak side for Tim Hardaway Jr., whether that's a screen from Cade after he made the entry pass, whether that's just a simple lift and move. But Tim Hardaway Jr. was threatening enough as a movement shooter coming off a curl that you couldn't load the paint when you had Duren and Ausar both kind of within 15 feet of each other, right? I don't know if Ivey can do that. I don't know if that's the same sort of role that Jaden Ivey can provide for an offense. I really like the idea, we've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast, of having Jaden Ivey go on the move. But I like the idea because you're creating a ton of space for him to then turn the corner and attack without having to create that space for himself without any help or with the help of a ball screen. So all this is to say, if they're going to do that high-low thing, I would almost rather you have Asar Thompson be on the high side rather than Jalen Duren. I know Duren's a much better screen setter, but if you're kind of thinking of a 4-out shell with the option of if the defense blitzes a screen to dip Asar Thompson to the high roller spot, basically right around that free throw line, and then kind of play almost a zone in that way where you're going to try to beat them from the middle. I would almost rather see Asar Thompson in that role, because if something, if the options aren't there, if the back cut from Duren doesn't play out, if the ISO to Asar on a one-on-one doesn't play out, if there's nothing on the backside that Asar would want to get to, you can just exit that whole setup and back Asar back out to the wing, where you can't do that with Duren. You'd have to have a two-step motion to switch out of that into another setup. So that's kind of how I'd set it up. I'd play around with it. I'm not an NBA X's and O mind, though. This is just my rambling of maybe how I'd try to set that up, because it is still an issue, right? The spacing is still an issue with that group of five. And I think that the spacing in particular with Jaden Ivey being very much historically anyway, a stationary 3-point shooter rather than a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. or Malik Beasley, who was a threat both in place and on a curl. Maybe Ivey can prove that he can do that. And if he can, like, oh my God, right? That's incredible, because now he has way more options than a Malik Beasley or a Tim Hardaway Jr. ever did when they were coming off a curl screen on the 3-point line. Because if Jaden Ivey can hit that three at a high rate, well, he could also grab and go and pull up for mid-range, or he can grab and go and get all the way to the rim, or he can make a play for someone else. Like, he can do all of that already at a high level. If he can add that 3-pointer, then, ceiling's off. He could be an incredible scorer. We just haven't seen it yet. So I don't quite know how that's all going to shake out. And I am a little worried about it, I have to say. But yeah, anyway, sorry, to end short, 4-out shell, swap Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren's roles. So just do what you did in the playoffs. That's loosely what I'm expecting out of that starting five in terms of how they're running the offense. I'm also assuming that you're still going to see quite a few blitzes of Cade Cunningham, because the last basketball any other team saw was the Knicks doing that to some level of success. So I assume we're going to see that replicated again. And then you're going to have Asar being a screener a lot more often when that is happening. So he could play in that high roll spot right at the top of the key.
Yeah, I mean, I think with how this starting group is set up, you're always going to have to finagle it a bit when you have two non-shooters in your first group, and that just makes the other players all the more important. I think Jaden Ivey is almost that swing player for me, because before he went down last year, he's shooting better than he ever has from three. It's still not a finished product, but if he could still simply do that, and it's not over a full season, it's like the 30 games or whatever he has, I think that opens the offense up a bit to just minimize those concerns you have with Asar and Jalen Duren, neither of them being threats from the perimeter. If you're going to have four guys on the perimeter and one of them is going to be left alone, like, the three other players better be somewhat of a threat, and one of them needs to be an elite threat, like we saw Malik Beasley be for this team last year. And hopefully one of those guys is Duncan Robinson or Karis LeVert, and Cade is even better from three. Ivey keeps up what he did before the injury. Because in general, you're always going to have those problems until the roster changes, but it's about finding looks in different ways. And I think Asar is the more challenging one. Duren's always going to be that lob threat, but if you can get Asar near the basket, and as long as he's able to connect on those, like, you could be able to take advantage of teams disregarding him some, whether it's from the 3-point line or like from the key, like you mentioned.
The last thing I want to add to this conversation, and this is going to be the last thing that I say about the floor spacing issue in the month of August. But anyway, I oftentimes I see this get framed as the Pistons are trading floor spacing for defense. That is not true because the Pistons on the roster have a better defending and better 3-point shooting option behind Jalen Duren. So to me, this is absolutely not a defense swap out thing. All right. It's true if you think you want to bench Asar Thompson, but who realistically right now is talking about bringing Asar Thompson off the bench? No one is, right? It's always focused on the center position and if they need a floor spacer for the 5 or if they're good with the lob threat kind of big and Duren. So it's the lob threat thing that you just brought up that is the real trade-off here. The question is, do you think Cade Cunningham needs a really big lob threat pick and roll big? And secondarily, if you do think that, do you think that Asar Thompson could provide some of that role in order to like keep the boat afloat, so to speak, when Isaiah Stewart or someone else that isn't a lob threat guy is out there on the floor? And I think that's an important, question to answer here. I do think we're going to figure that out this season. So I'm down to figure it out. I'm much more open to this than I ever was in the past, but don't go thinking that this is a defensive thing. This has nothing to do with defense. This is all about trying to figure out if they are able to kind of force this offensively to work because our Asar Thompson's defensive upside is so high. But you're not thinking about benching Asar. It's about doing something at the 5 position. And at the 5 position, if you really care about spacing, I got news for you. They've got someone that's also a better defender right behind Jalen Duren right now. So, again, they're not going to change it. It's not going to change. It shouldn't change before the season starts. It should not change. This is going to be the starting lineup, and that's the starting lineup that it should be. They're going to figure out whether or not this is palatable long-term or not. I do honestly believe that conversation is part of why we've not seen an Ivey and Duren extension, because we're kind of answering 2 questions here this year, right? We just talked about the issue of Tim Hardaway Jr.'s role being gone from that starting lineup. Do you need that sort of shooter to make this whole thing work if you're going to keep rolling with Duren and Asar? Or are you able to have Jaden Ivey and a player of his talents in that type of role and have it still work out? Is the whole pairing of Asar and Duren even workable at all? Right? You got to know that too. So this is going to be an important year. We don't have time to bring it up really here, but, or at least not in too much depth, but the Hunter Patterson interview that he did for The Athletic with Trajan Langdon, and the way that Langdon was answering questions about the extension for those 2 guys, and the way that this year is still very much a building year and they're trying to find out about their guys that they have. I thought it was very well done by Langdon, first of all, and also very savvy with all of these questions that you and I have. I mean, we've been spending all offseason talking about all that's up in the air, right? I mean, yeah, with the Duren Asar thing, yeah, much more than that. So I've never been more confident that we're going to figure something out, and that's exciting. We just got to wait.
Yeah, you're right. Like, it's not a scheme thing with the certain someones that haven't got extensions yet. It's a player personnel thing and a player makeup thing. Is this just who these guys are? Are they going to improve in areas you need them to? If not, do they still will the defense still work? And I think that is really the biggest question heading into the year, because the answer for me, even though it might be quite harsh, is if it doesn't work and this is who Jaden Ivey and or Jalen Duren are, and it doesn't work in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to commit long-term deals at a decent amount of salary to them, and potentially a change of scenery would help them, and that opens up more for the Pistons to go and get a player that fills the hole that they need. They're both good at different things in their own right, but it's all about cohesion. And that's something that Langdon talked about in the interview with The Athletic and Hunter, who did a great job with that. I thought it was really interesting timing for
tremendous piece.
Yeah, for this conversation, and something that Pistons fans honestly need to hear. I think a lot of what Langdon did is reaffirmed the thoughts that we already had, but and just like flexibility as well. I think the team has not given up their flexibility, especially with not extending either Ivey or Duren yet. That could still happen for either or both of them, but there are questions that they have to answer as players, as well as how this front office is trying to make up the team.
I mean, I'm not convinced that Trajan Langdon's not going to be running for public office at some time soon with the way he answered that question about Ivey and Duren's contract. The direct question, which props to Hunter for asking a direct question about the extensions, right? When are those going to come? Are they going to come? And Langdon's answer was essentially, we are really excited that Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren are going to be part of our roster to start the year. You could read that so many ways. I mean, that is a politically savvy answer right there by the GM of the Detroit Pistons.
We'll also shout out to Hunter for asking an indirect but direct question, asking Langdon about the relationship between gambling and sports. I thought that was incredible. But with what you said about how Langdon presents himself, let me tell you like one thing about Trajan Langdon. So I saw him last year when I was at the Motor City Cruise open tryouts. He came in towards the end just to watch what was going on. That man has like a certain aura about him, and just one of those guys that when they walk into a room, like everyone takes notice, I guess, and it's not because he's saying anything or being loud or anything like that. He's just that kind of guy. And I think he's been transparent in the public comments that we've gotten, but also in a thoughtful way, which I feel like you don't get all the time. Like my mind is going to the whole train wreck in Dallas last year and Nico Harrison's press conferences. So overall, I don't think we always had that in Detroit. And I think Langdon has done an impeccable job of just answering those difficult questions in the right way, knowing that there are personal relationships, but also a business and goals and everything at stake.
The last thing I'll say is that it is actually incredibly difficult to be both calculated and honest at the same time. Because you could read these interviews, you could watch those interviews with Trajan Langdon, and this has nothing to do with basketball. This is just, being, I guess, in a sense, partially media trained, partially just being incredibly aware of the words you are saying and the meaning that could be behind them and the way they could be read and misunderstood, potentially misunderstood, I should say. And the way that Langdon is able to seemingly pick his words extremely carefully on the fly, to give a very, very particular answer to a question he didn't know was coming ahead of time. Yet he knows that he wants to provide, and in a way that is also not, he doesn't come across like he's being a politician or something, right? He doesn't come across like he's hiding something from you. Even that one we were joking about with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. Well, we're happy that they're going to be on the team to start this season. You read that, you go, yeah, they are, right? They are, and that's leaving the door open for a million of possibilities that could be coming down the pike after the fact, right? So he's saying nothing to those, and he's also speaking candidly on the state of the roster right now, which I just thought there are plenty of wonderful answers like that. It's very impressive. I think the way he handles interviews from various, it's not just trained journalists like the Athletic, Hunter Patterson. It's also, media personalities like the hosts of Summer League, right? When you're watching those broadcasts. He's the same guy every time. So what you said about the aura there, it's not surprising to me. It doesn't shock me. Yeah. Let's go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. That was all I had. Just totally agree with it. I think the Pistons have a great leader in place, which is nice to have.
Can't ask for more, right? Let's close on this one because I think it's kind of fun. I'm going to tack on another question to the back of this, and then we will wrap it up there. But Caleb says, what do you think are the chances of an Asar Thompson breakout year? I'm going to add the follow-up question that I'm going to have you answer, and that is, what does an Asar Thompson breakout year look like?
That was actually my exact question because Pistons fan brings it up in the chat as well. I apologize bringing up the comment at the same time. He thinks Asar could have a breakout year, just not sure about the shooting, but in other respects, he thinks so. I agree with that. I don't think Asar Thompson is magically going to improve his, let's be honest, dreadful 3-point shooting percentage to even league minimum or greatly more than it already is right now. But I do think he's going into year 3. We know how talented of an athlete he is. He missed training camp last season, missed the start of last season. He has the full summer to get prepared, work on whatever it is he's working on. And it's just another year under his belt. And I think it makes sense for this to be the year he really makes a name for himself. I mean, I know we mentioned this a few weeks ago, but Zach Lowe mentioned Asar Thompson was his most interesting player of the heading into the year, which, I mean, I'm certainly biased paying the most attention to this team out of any teams, but I can see where he's going with that. What I think a breakout year would be for Asar is mainly on the defensive side of the ball. Like, we know what an elite defender he already is, but I think there's another level he can get to that's getting really to that all defensive level, heck, maybe even defensive player of the year level. We saw Dyson Daniels make that step in Atlanta, and he's still a young guy as well. I'm not calling my shot that Asar is going to be the defensive player of the year, but I would not be surprised if he won that award at some point over his career. And then on the other side of the ball, offensively, I think if he just makes some sort of a leap, like connecting on those easier looks that were created for him that maybe he didn't last year. I think we saw that a decent amount. I mean, he shot decently from the field. If he can, especially if he's taking most of his attempts near the rim, if he can get that up to it, he shot 53.5% from the field last year. If he can get into like that big man range, maybe like somewhere close to 60, I think that's a huge win and would honestly constitute as somewhat of a breakout for him. He averaged 10 a game last year, and maybe that means he gets up to 15. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's a primary like 20 point a night guy, but he's a good playmaker as well. Maybe he can up those numbers a little bit. 2.3 assists a game last year. Is there going to be as many opportunities for that with Jaden and Ivey coming back? We didn't see them play together last year, but I think overall it's just continuing his terror as a defender and then finding ways to add like 3, 4, 5 points a game, just being a little bit more efficient from the hoop.
Yeah, the field goal percentage, I'm glad you brought that up because that was exactly where I was going to go. Like, I do not care about Asar Thompson's 3-point shooting percentage. I've just completely written it off. Maybe I'm unreasonably confident, but I'm extremely confident Asar Thompson is not going to shoot the 3 ball well this season for Detroit. And I'm also pretty confident he's just not ever going to. Like, I think you could just write that off. But the thing is, and I think you're making clear through your response there, he doesn't need to still be an incredibly impactful player. This is one of the best defenders, perimeter defenders, and also just all around defenders in the NBA at a premium position. They're out on the perimeter, right? As a 3 who can guard 1 through 4 really effectively, and then even some smaller 5s. So, like, I think I made the prediction on our last episode with Anthony. I think he ups his stocks numbers to at least 3. I think he gets over 3. I think last year he was 2.4. Okay, so that's 0.6 more stocks per game. That's steals plus blocks. And I'll call my shot. I think he's all NBA first team. I think that's going to happen this season.
Defense.
Defense. Correct. Yes. Not in general. That would be one heck of a leap. Thank you for clearing that up. All NBA first team defense, not in general. But with that, so if he could get that field goal percentage up to 57, 58, right, I think you're pretty confidently looking at his points being somewhere around 13 instead of 10. I really want to see more rebounds out of him. I would love it if Asar Thompson were more aggressive on the boards so that we could get more grab and go out of him. Mm-hmm. He's a terror in transition, man, with the ball or without. If you imagine him getting the ball off of a rebound, going and then playing kind of a two-man fast break with Jaden Ivey, oh, that could be so much fun. That could be so much fun to watch. So I'm hoping that we start to see some of that out of him. I'd like his rebounds numbers up closer to 8 rather than the 5 that they were last year. And, and as far as the assists goes, 2 to 3 is, I don't think he's ever going to be a big assists guy because, as good as he is in terms of how he sees the floor, he's not the best ball handler. He's not going to be a guy getting ball screens or even really too many DHOs as the ball handler. I think he could be a good DHO screener, actually. Like if you just want to use him in that way, I think that'd be fun to have him having that choice, right? Do I actually want to hand the ball off or can I turn the corner myself? That's dangerous as all get out, right, for Asar. That's kind of where I see him. I could see him being at like 13 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. If he could get up to 57, 58% from the floor, 3 stocks, like that's a breakout year for Asar Thompson to me. I know that's not the sexiest stat line in the world, but the impact that type of line would have is through the roof. That is an all NBA first team defender type of stat line out of him. And truthfully, votes for defensive player of the year. So I'd give it actually a pretty high. I'm unreasonably confident that Asar Thompson's going to do that. All of those things this year. I'm like 80% confident. So if that's our threshold for a breakout season, 80% chance. I'm all in.
Yeah. This is the year. If it just makes sense with him having that full off season, coming back at full health and everything. I mean, I honestly don't see a reason for it not to happen, which might be famous last words, but he's in a position for a massive, like no-brainer extension. And honestly, I see his season as like proving the Pistons right and just like giving that to him.
Sorry about that. I was on mute there for a second. QT brings up the fouls. So I was looking this up on the back and I wanted to make sure that my instinct was correct. And I think it was. So I believe this is going to work out. I'm not going to actually do the math because I do not have enough time, but it looks like fouls per game went down after the All-Star break, which fits the eye test. He was getting a bit better of a whistle. When he starts to get the Draymond Green, Dyson Daniels, Amen Thompson too, like these elite defenders get a little bit of a different whistle, and he's got that reputation now. It reminds me a little bit of the Cade Cunningham foul conversation, right? Before the All-Star break, all the conversation was, well, Cade's getting hacked, right? He needs more calls. And then he goes to the All-Star game, and then he's got one heck of a month, and then all of a sudden the Pistons are winning a bunch of games, and oh, hey, look at that. Like he's getting more calls. And on top of it, I think he kind of figured out how to get the calls too, so he had 2 good things going at once. Same thing's going on with Asar. He's starting to get more respect, and he's kind of figuring out when he's got to pull his hands away to not, to actually be able to leverage that respect that he's getting from the officials. But I'm with QT, like less fouls per game, big deal for Asar Thompson, and I'm not too worried about it. I think he's got that under control.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, across the board, like he's sort of in that category with Duren and Stewart, where it's just like, can't take yourself out of the game. And hopefully he learns more with that as he just goes into another year and another full year mainly.
All right, Blake, any big thoughts or words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners before the Labor Day weekend?
I mean, it only is that we're done with August, so we're getting closer to the
Yes.
season. We'll have some more tangible stuff to talk about, even though we did have some news to talk about this time. So I'm excited. Fall's right around the corner, and that means basketball's right
No.
around the corner too.
Yes. I'm so conflicted. I don't
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
I mean, I like fall, but don't let my summer end. But also, I want more
yeah.
basketball. All right. I'm gonna
I'm
have to. I'll meditate on this for you, Blake.
I'm with you there. No, it's we're in that season, but it'll be good. And shout out to everyone for joining. Reminder, you can call our phone line to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.